Right, good afternoon and welcome to the second WordPress Q&A session from us, Highrise Digital. I'm Mark.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Keith.
I'm Jonathan.
And what we're going to try and do in this session is to take some questions from people that have submitted some questions to us about WordPress, about the web, about things like that, and we're going to try and answer them for them. So we'll get started straight away. So the first question we had was around multisite, WordPress multisite. So as I've heard about this thing called WordPress multisite and what it is and what you and when you would want to use it. I can't read my own writing. So what is multisite? I suppose is the first question, or first part of that question. Keith.
It's a network of WordPress websites, all based on the single installation of WordPress. I think is probably the way I would describe it to somebody.
Okay. So it has one set of WordPress files then, isn't it? And that runs multiple WordPress websites. So you don't have to have like two lots of installations and things like that. And so
One database as well. That's optional.
Yeah. I think if it gets really big, you can have multiple ones, but that gets really complicated then. But yeah, essentially it has one database as well, which is and each site has its own tables within that database, doesn't it? So yeah, I think all the sites handle or use the same set of plugins and themes. So it has benefits for things like updates, because if you want to update all the sites within the network, then you're going to just do that once. One update of WordPress, one update of all the plugins, one update of the theme. And that's going to have that update passed to all those network of sites, which is quite good.
I mean, I guess the reason why that's good is that it allows control over the website, so that every website that's within the network has a similar look and feel, a similar set of functionality, similar things that you can do. So if you're a large organisation wanting to kind of control that, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Keep things the same between the different sites.
That'll do. That's a
continuity.
Good word. Thank you.
Consistency.
Consistency.
That was the word I was looking for. Then that's really going to help.
And obviously, not every child site needs to have the same plugins activated.
That's a really good point.
So it's kind of a mix, a pick and choose, isn't it? So we've got this collection of common functionality across the network, and actually certain sites can say, well, I want it all. Or certain sites can say, well, I don't want hardly any of that, I just want this little bit that we've got available.
I like the word collection.
Collection?
That works. You know, it is you've collected together the stuff that you need, and then you can offer it to child sites.
Yeah. And I think one of the other good things about it is that all the sites share the same users. Now, that doesn't mean to say that all users have access to all the sites in the network. But it does mean to say that users can log in once and then have access to the sites they're allowed to have access to, and that can be controlled like a network level as to which users get access to which
like an editor that can just do content across all of the network sites.
So am I right in thinking that Highrise Digital have got some pretty big multi-site installations for some clients? You know, so it can be sort of 2 or 3 sites or thousands?
Or millions. Yeah.
So WordPress.com is multi-site?
That's right.
Yeah.
And how many millions of websites are on that?
Yeah.
I mean, they do a lot of extra stuff to make sure that works well. And
I don't think that's quite out of the box, but
But from our point of view, we've built a number of multi-site networks now, some of which have over 500 websites on them, and it's just, you could imagine if we hadn't used multi-site for that, trying to update all those sites, like we said, I mean, just running a round of updates on one website is time consuming enough, never mind multiplying that by 500, it would be a full-time job. If you're not just gung-ho pressing update, obviously, you're testing it and so forth, but So those, is there 2? There's 2, there's going to be 3 actually, isn't there? We've got running, we've got 500 on each one. Yeah. And then there's going to be a third one. It works remarkably well actually, isn't it? Off one install of WordPress, lots of users. Needs a little bit of tweaking to make it sort of smooth. Like we've got some caching in there that makes sure that there's not too much traffic to the database, because like you said, there's only one database. Heavy. If you get lots of users on all 500 sites, the database is kind of like
trying to handle a lot of traffic, so it kind of needs a bit of caching in there. But it works really well from a development point of view, and certainly from a client point of view, because it means they can have this common functionality across all these sites.
What would happen if one of those sites suddenly got a lot of traffic? How would that affect the rest of the network?
Well, if it was cached, then not necessarily an awful lot. Really. I mean, the server would still have to do a bit of work, wouldn't it, to serve those static pages, but it wouldn't be essentially too bad. But yeah, if it wasn't, then they all use the same resources, don't they? But like I said, like WordPress.com, there's things you can do when it gets to that point to try and help and ease those things, and split it into different databases and have better server power and things like that.
And that happened to us on that build as well, because we started and the site numbers started to build up, and then we hit certain issues with the hosting and performance issues and things like that, so we had to find the solutions to that, and it mainly revolved around caching.
I mean, we were, like I say, fortunate, but those sites are quite static sites. They're just content. There's nothing dynamic going on. I don't even think they have contact forms on there or anything like that. So actually every page view can be the same for everybody. I'll just turn these notifications off because that's rather annoying. Can be the same for everybody, and therefore you can just cache the page and everyone sees the same page. If that wasn't the case, we'd have had to do something a little bit different in terms of like making different pages for different people or logged in users and things like that.
We've used the word caching a lot.
Have we?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
And I just wonder if
explain
it should be briefly explained.
Is that down to me?
Well, it's I think so.
So for me, the best explanation of caching, and I'd love to find out who. I think it was a tweet I read at some point in time, and they said the best to explain caching, the best way to do it was to say to someone, do a really complicated calculation. So let's say 493.7 times by 838.9, and what would everybody do? They'd all get the phone out and they'd start saying da-da-da. But then they cache the answer. So if I asked the same question 10 seconds later, they wouldn't do the calculation, they'd just read the answer out. That's what caching is. So it's like saving it for later, so you can quickly access it again without having to do the whole processing and calculation again.
Great explanation.
So it takes load off the server.
Essentially, yeah. You're getting it from memory because you've remembered it from 10 seconds earlier rather than having to do the calculation again, and that's what caching actually is.
There's also lots of different types of caching on a website, or potentially.
Should we stick with multi-site though?
Yes.
Because we had questions about
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I wonder if we should talk about some good examples of multi-site, because we,
like when to use it and when not to use it.
Some examples, business examples of okay, my business is this. Does multi-site work? Maybe. So we had a few. So
I think if you've got like a business that has they need a set of websites that have those features that we talked about basically with multi-site. So if they've got shared functionality, they might have a shared user base with different access rights, then that makes sense. So thinking like an estate agent that might have multiple branches within a region, they all want the website because they want to put properties on, and they all want to write about themselves, and they might be slightly different, but they essentially want the same website. It might have different colours, it might have a different name and so forth, but they could use the same functionality within WordPress to make that happen.
Might well have different URLs, different web addresses as well.
Absolutely, multi-site allows complete flexibility that you can have whatever domain you want essentially for all the sites, which is great.
So to the visitor, they don't really even know that the site's on a multi-site.
No. They can have like a subdomain, so like like something.domain.com as like the site, and that's appropriate sometimes, isn't it? Where you've got, I don't know but you want the person to see the same domain in the URL because it's obvious.
For branding,
like maybe like branding and stuff. But then sometimes it makes no sense, and you want to have them as separate URLs. But you can do that as well. I think that you used to have a plugin for that, but you don't anymore. You can just do it without a plugin, which is easier.
I like the estate agent example. I think restaurants is another good example. I think the first time I came across multi-site was looking at a restaurant franchise. It's a branch of restaurants that all had very similar names but were operated independently in the Bristol area where I'm from. And it allowed each management team within the restaurant to log in, put whatever photos they wanted in, update their menus because their menus were all different, pictures of the team, the waitresses, the waiters, all that sort of stuff. It worked really, really well. It was good for them because they were very independently run restaurants.
We haven't covered the development cost saving. So if that same group of restaurants had come to a developer, and they might think that they need 5 different websites, but actually a multi-site could save a whole lot of time and money in that build as well.
Yeah, and then just with some buttons you can click to say this one's going to be purple, this one's going to be blue, green, whatever, to go with their colours.
Any other examples?
I think it might be worth talking about some sort of examples where multi-site doesn't work, but you might feel like it would work. Like the restaurant example again we were talking about a little earlier, saying that some restaurants maybe they have the same menu, maybe they don't need to put the pictures up and so much individuality, in which case one website with custom post types would work, and it could just all be one web address with slash whatever.
And then have things inside that section of the site if you don't need more, like if you do need more than one page. That could work. I guess it comes down to like how much you want to isolate each site as well. I know we kept saying that they're part of a network and they're all together, but if you want something to appear as a separate site, then having a multi-site is good in that aspect, because if I log into site A, I don't see anything to do with site B. Whereas in the method you just said, you just log into one site and you see all the content, and there's things you can do to make sure users can't see certain things, but it's a bit easier. Yeah, it gets a bit complicated to do that, isn't it?
So it's probably more of a benefit for managing the sites rather than how the sites are actually portrayed to the visitor.
It's a bit easier into that way.
Sort of back-end administration side of things.
I know a lot of like agencies that run WordPress multi-sites for their clients, which has a lot of benefits, all the benefits we've kind of been talking about, which is like for the agencies it's really easy to update things. You update things once and all the clients are updated, and it's really good. I think one thing with multi-site that's a little bit more tricky is if you want to extract one of those sites out of a multi-site and say here it is as a separate WordPress site. It's doable, and there's some plugins and things to help that. It's not quite as straightforward as just like, make it taking the whole thing and taking it somewhere else, basically.
What about the opposite? So if you've just inherited a client that's already got a site that you want to bring onto your multi-site network, can that be done?
It can. Again, there's I think it's what's the plugin called? Delicious Brains guys do one.
Great DB Pro.
That's the one, and they've got some add-ons for multi-site add-ons, and I did it the other week for one of our clients. Pulled one out of the site. It was brilliant.
It works really well.
Not quite as straightforward as like just copying the site and moving it, but it was pretty painless.
I think your question was an interesting one though, Jonathan, because the whole point of a multi-site is that you want to have a shared set of themes and a shared set of plugins. So if you've got a random site over here that's been developed with a whole set of unique functionality, sticking it into a multi-site doesn't always make sense.
You're not getting any efficiencies there.
No, and the only thing you're getting is
you can update core.
And you maybe end up kind of clogging up the other sites with options and things that they don't need.
I've thought of a really good example of when multi-site's useful that we haven't covered.
Ooh.
Multilingual.
Good point.
So multilingual is obviously it's a pretty tricky solution to solve, and there's been lots of plugins that people have developed to try to solve the problem, and we've actually suggested recently to some clients that a multi-site might be a much better way to handle that. So you get all the benefits of having like a kind of single sign-on into the system, but you don't have all these crazy user interfaces where you're trying to they're trying to like switch between posts, and the data's much cleaner. I think there's loads and loads of benefits to using a multi-site for multilingual.
I suppose the disadvantage that springs to my mind is that you would have to have good discipline within your team to make sure that you are mirroring the content across each of the different languages. If you had French, German and English, someone would have to create 3 pages.
But then don't they have to do that anywhere? If I write a page like about us, I have to do that for whatever I use. I have to write it in the 3 different languages and remember to do so.
Yeah, that's true.
But those tools, those plugins made that slightly easier to have that overview of like
in one place.
So you can see this post hasn't yet been translated. Whereas with multi-site,
but you could do that with multi-site.
You could, exactly.
You could.
What about what about the media library though? So if you've got images that you've uploaded to one, they're not going to be available to the others, are they? So you have to then re-upload those each time.
But you might want like what's the word?
That'd be a good thing.
Location-specific images that are suitable to that location. So maybe you want like a shared media library, but then the ability to override and say, "No, I want to."
Can you have a shared media library?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've seen stuff out there that can. Yeah, you can do that.
But also like image meta as well. So like captions and descriptions.
Yeah.
You need those to be
Yeah,
translated.
completely.
So it's that's a really good point. And media does make that slightly more complicated, but I'm sure there's solutions out there for that
I think
as well.
multilingual. Well, I know we're getting slightly off multi-site, but multilingual is complicated.
Yeah,
it's never easy.
It's always more complicated than you
Yeah,
initially
You
think.
want it to
Definitely.
be.
Yeah.
So
Oops,
what's
plugs
breaking.
If I just pulled everything.
You've pulled everything out, has it? Gone.
Lights
Lights gone off and everything.
Does that signal the end of multi-site?
yeah. It's getting bored of that conversation.
I think we should stop it and check the audio and everything.
Well, we'll have to now, so yeah, let's do it.
I'm gonna keep that in. It's fine.
Yeah, it makes you seem real and human, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
when you
don't mind.